Good evening. This is Kat on Cities 92.9. This is Conservative Kat, and with me in studio, it's Geoff Tompkins, and he is running for McLean County Board District 7. And folks, I think we're less than a month away. I think the last countdown, I think it's like close to 30 days away. It is less than a month away, the election. So on the ticket, you're going to see Geoff Tompkins' name. And today on the show, we've got to talk about Geoff Tompkins as a candidate. And I want to get to who he is as a candidate, and then also his opponents and these far left socialists that have been running for our county boards and for our local elections. So recently I covered the story, and I think that it is a big story, that Sharon Chung had hired a campaign manager who self-identifies as a socialist and explicitly said he is a comrade. And that's kind of concerning. And I wanted to talk with Geoff Tompkins about his opponents. Geoff, who are you up against? I know that Ben Webb is in this district with you, but who's the other candidate?
Val Lehman.
Val Lehman. Yeah, just get real close. Yeah, there we go. Val Lehman. So what can you tell me about your candidates a little, or these, the opposition and the struggles that you come across in the campaign trail, and what it's like going up against these people and how you differ from them?
Well, I don't think that it's been a real struggle so far. Both of these candidates got seated and were elected by a very, very slim margin in a very contentious presidential election year. They barely slid in. I've walked hundreds of houses, knocking on hundreds of doors, and I hear the same refrain every time, that neither of these candidates represent the values of the citizens of District 7.
Mm-hmm. Now, Val, I think currently she sits on the McLean County Board, does she not?
Correct.
Right. And you said you were knocking on doors. What are some things you're hearing from constituents about these candidates, about Val Lehman specifically? Now, are they upset with certain things in this County Board District 7? Are there certain things that they want to see done for this district specifically?
Yes, exactly. A lot of people, their primary concerns are public safety, crime, lower taxes, and inflation. Those three things all go hand in hand. My opponents have a track record of not supporting the McLean County Sheriff's Office, obstructing when they can, and being thin on the budget. If I'm elected, I'm going to support and back the Blue 100% and give them the resources and the funding that they need to not only recruit and retain deputies, but to grow and stay with the department.
Yes, exactly. And, I was thinking about McLean County, and I forget exactly what district she serves in. Sharon Chung, she serves on the McLean County Board. And your primary, I've got your palm card here, and what it says is backing the Blue, standing for you. I think that there is a real problem with a lot of these McLean County Board members, Val Lehman, also Sharon Chung, clearly, they have actively spoken out and are adamant against the McLean County Sheriff. I don't know why he's the punching bag, but if you are elected to the McLean County Board District 7, what kind of stance are you going to take with this Safety Act? What can you do at the county level to make sure that we're safe in our communities?
Well, first, I think that it's very important that we give a shout out to our Sheriff John Sandage, who has stood up and fought the fight consistently. John Sandage and Erica Reynolds recently filed suit against the Safety Act with the state of Illinois. A lot of times he becomes a punching bag for the left simply because he stands up for what's right. He stands up for our men and women in uniform. He stands up for our law-abiding citizens, and he's not afraid to take the fight to them. They see that as a threat, so they do everything they can to undermine his administration and his operation at the jail. That stuff's going to end when I'm on the county board. I'm going to fight to stand with John Sandage and Matt Lane and Erica Reynolds and all of our first responders in McLean County so that they can get people protected, so that we can go on and have a prosperous and safe community that we can raise our families in.
Now, when you say that, are you going to vote for, more budgeting for the McLean County Jail? Is there specific measures that you're going to take in order to back the Blue?
Yes. Pay equity for McLean County deputies has been one of my hallmarks when I first decided to run. Currently, they've made great strides recently in raising this deputy salaries, but it's still far below what an entry-level officer makes in Normal or Bloomington. Pay equity for McLean County deputies is going to be a priority for me as a board member. Unique opportunities to retain deputies in our county. Too often, McLean County bears the cost of training and education for our deputies only to have them lured away by a higher paying job. So we have to then go through the hiring process again and then spend the money to train them. If we had programs in McLean County to retain our deputies, we might have to think outside the box sometimes, like perhaps a property tax waiver for McLean County deputies to live and stay in McLean County for a certain number of years. Take-home units that will improve response times. Instead of having to run down to the sheriff's office, get your car and get your gear, and then go to the scene, they can depart directly from their home. It will also expand visibilities in some of our rural communities where they don't have a police department, but the deputy takes his unit home. There's a unit that's visible. People see it coming and going. I think there's several other advantages to take-home units as well. Pride of maintenance, keeping your squad unit up and maintained. You're accountable for that vehicle, and your pride will show in its appearance.
Now, one thing as a McLean County constituent myself, what I would like to see, and I know that they're really trying to get this kind of done at the McLean County Jail, a gym. I know that sounds silly, but when I went and I toured the McLean County Jail with John Sandage, it was kind of like a sad, little workout room. It was like, oh, well, they've got little free weights there and a little bench and stuff like that. And they're so busy, right? They're at the jail, the correctional officers. And we're talking about McLean County deputies having this take home. There's little tiny things like that I think would improve the lives of these officers, not only the deputies, but also perhaps these correctional officers. I would love to see a gym. Would that be something you'd be willing to fund?
Absolutely. That's a very unique idea. I think that perhaps the gym portion of the facility was an afterthought. Who knows? We can make it right. There's space. There's money.
And this is the way it's supposed to go. Hey, Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. We're talking with Geoff Tompkins, and he is running for County Board District 7, and he's really all for the blue. That's what I'm trying. That's what I'm picking up. This candidate is for the blue, something so desperately needed on the McLean County Board, because right now, currently, I only see Chuck Erickson really speaking out for our men and women in blue here in McLean County, and the deputy situation. That's been a thing for a couple of years now. When I started at Cities, I had been talking with our general manager about it, and we were like, yeah, the take-home vehicles, that just makes sense. And I would hope to see that those take-home vehicles or even, more funding go towards helping them out to try to relieve officers in areas that, not many people, coming up with different outside of the box ways to relieve officers, and having a take home vehicle and having more time in these rural areas. It really does matter. Now, I did want to talk about, you had mentioned that was one of the reasons why you started to run, the McLean County deputies and the take home vehicles and making sure that they have all of the funding. Now, what are some other reasons why you wanted to run?
I want to run because the District 7 is a prosperous district. It is also a district that is fully contained within the city of Bloomington. There are no normal parts. There are no county parts. It is basically two large neighborhoods in the middle of the city of Bloomington. I feel I have a very excellent working relationship with the city of Bloomington. I've served as a liquor commissioner for over 5 years under two different mayors. I have a very good relationship and the endorsement of current Mayor Maboka Mwamwe. I have no problem representing the county interest to the city in that capacity, and I'd like to see a little more proactivity in that regard. Mm-hmm. Another reason I'm running is just when I talk to my friends and neighbors, we're out blowing leaves or mowing grass or doing all the things that people do. People just talk about how did we end up with two Democrats as our board members, and it just kind of happened by a few votes. And that's why I encourage everybody to get out and vote, and let's take this district back and back the blue. Mm-hmm.
Now, I wanted to also ask, and I don't know if this is going to happen, but if things were to shut down again, I was very disappointed in a lot of our county board members because a lot of the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions and things like that, they decided to shut down our counties, which really hurt McLean County because we are very entrepreneurial in a sense that we're kind of an anomaly here when it comes to jobs and keeping our economy booming despite all of the things at the state level. Now, what would you do if the state were to decree that we had to shut down again, if that were to ever happen with COVID-19, say cases surged again and Governor J.B. Pritzker came down with another executive order? What would be your reaction?
Well, I think that the moment that befell us during those dark times was a learning experience. We hadn't had that since perhaps the Spanish flu pandemic of the early 1900s, so we didn't know how to react. Perhaps we overreacted. It certainly hurt the small businessmen. It certainly hurt the men and women that punch a clock every day and have to go to work. I would hope that this doesn't happen again, but if it does, I think we have a lot of lesson learned about what not to do next time. I think it really, really hurt a lot of small businessmen and was an overreaction, and it was an overreach by the state. We've got to balance personal freedoms and personal individual liberties with state health. I understand that, but it's my understanding that the state of Illinois is still under an emergency decree. We're one of 2 states that are still doing that. I'll be one voice out of 20 on the county board, but you can rest assured that my voice will be heard, and I will not try to have a repeat of what happened last time.
Mm-hmm. And before we take the break, I did want to ask about partisan politics. Now, this was a question asked of your opponent in that district, Benjamin Webb, a while back, and WGLT had done like a little questionnaire. And this is what he had to say to this question. The question is, the county board is unusually among unusual local governments in that it's partisan, with political parties attached to members' names, which I don't understand. I don't think it's all that unusual, maybe in this area, but most county boards are partisan. There's Republicans and Democrats elected, but I just can't stand the question. So why are you a Republican? You're running on the Republican side of things, Geoff Tompkins. So what Benjamin Webb had to reply to this question is, as partisan as politics have become, I am a Democrat and a Democratic candidate because I value how the party elevates the voices of ordinary working people. We come from diverse ways of life and benefit from that strength and strength and a collective coming together. We care for our neighbors. We share the responsibility and obligation to be there for one another. And I think that the world needs goodness towards one another more than ever. So this was a questionnaire. That was a question or an answer that Benjamin Webb provided WGLT back in 2020. Very partisan, and we had talked about it a little bit. A very contentious presidential election. Your response to that answer and why you are a Republican.
Well, firstly, I take exception to the notion that a nonpartisan board is the rule. It is not. I tend to agree with what you just said. Most of the positions that are elected throughout the state in the United States are D or R. The Bloomington City Council being the exception to that rule. Everything else is partisan in our county. And I think it is important to draw a distinction between Republican and Democratic policies. When it comes to taxes, when it comes to individual liberties, when it comes to military strength, all of these things I lie firmly within the Republican Party field of political thought. I haven't always felt this way. When I was a student at the University of Arkansas, I was president of Young Democrats. But you got to remember, the Democrat of Arkansas of 1990 is very akin to the Republican of 2022. We had concealed carry in our state in 1990 with the Democratic governor, Bill Clinton. And looking back now, they seem almost conservative in retrospect. Now Arkansas is a solidly Republican state. My views evolved over time. I think it was Winston Churchill or someone once said, a young man that isn't liberal doesn't have a heart, and an adult that isn't conservative doesn't have a brain. The first time I got out of college and opened up my paycheck and I saw what Uncle Sam's bite was out of that paycheck, that moved me over. When I joined the Arkansas National Guard, that definitely moved me to the right. I was never a progressive liberal. It was a Democratic state and a Democratic machine that was quite conservative. Those values are not true in 2022 anymore. The only party that stands up for the individual, that stands up for our men and women in uniform, is the Republican Party. And that's the party I'm in. That's the party I'm proud to be in. And that's the party I'm going to stay in. And you won't see me halfway through my term changing parties. I've been a precinct committeeman 2 times.
Now, was that a slide at Josh Barnett there?
No.
No, we would not do that here on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. We've got to take a quick break. That's a perfect place to stop. When we come back, we're going to continue our long-form interview, and because we're your election headquarters, Cities 92.9, and we're going to continue this interview with Geoff Tompkins. He's running for county board in District 7. Keep it right here. Hey, it's Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. And before we took the break, we were talking with Geoff Tompkins. We're going to continue our conversation with Geoff Tompkins. He is running for McLean County Board District 7, and he's got some people on that ticket. They are the current... Is Benjamin Webb, is he actually a county board? He's not on the county board.
I believe he did serve on the county board previously and then moved into the district. And as soon as he landed, decided to file for election.
Yes. So now he's running in District 7. So back in 2020, he actually ran, I believe, for District 4. And now he's back on the ticket, Benjamin Webb and Val Lehman. I've got to take some time, dig through their Twitter, because I'm sure there is some socialist stuff out there. The Democrat Socialists of America seem to be totally cool with running candidates who are totally against this country, which brings me to this question. We were talking about this question specifically, the county board, and this was a question that GLT had given Benjamin Webb way back when. In 2020, and they had asked, it's kind of unusual that local governments are partisan with political parties. Why are you a Democrat, Ben Webb? He said, I'm a Democrat, and I'm a Democrat candidate because how I value the party and how it elevates voices of ordinary working people. So I wanted to ask you, and we were talking about the Republican Party, why you're a part of the Republican Party. Is this Democrat Party for the working guy?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of people that go to work every day and have to ask the boss if they can take off to go watch their kids' graduation that aren't at the top of the pecking order in their company. They're not represented by Democrats. Democrats represent anyone that is politically expedient to do so at the time. It could be one group one week, another group another week. But the men and women that go to work every day in this town stay consistent. I think they deserve fair representation on the county board rather than just hollow slogans and hollow promises and hollow dreams that are never going to come true. I think that we need to make a community that's safe to raise our children and to raise our lives and our families and elevate it to be prosperous, not to jump on whatever today's cause is and use people. They actually use people in their party to make their point as props, as backdrops, as subjects, and it's wrong, and it's cruel, and it's divisive, and it's deceptive.
Yeah, I would say, and he also continues to say, the diverse ways of life, the inclusion, and you were telling me a little bit about your story. Do you have experience with diversity and inclusion? And a lot of the time, I don't know Benjamin Webb's story. I would love to have you on, Ben. If you want to come on, go ahead, come on. I mean, I guess I got to say that. Go ahead, come on. But it's like, if you have such a diverse background and inclusion, you look at other places in this country, and that's what really ticks me off about Sharon Chung. A lot of these people, Alex Campbell, Benjamin Webb, Val Lehman, they all subscribe to people like People's First, One People, these associations that say, well, we're all for socialism, we're all for equity, we're all for, leveling out the playing field, and this idea of it's communist ideas. That's what they're all for. And what bothers me about it is if you talk to people in those countries, it's not healthy, and it's definitely not promoting diversity and inclusion. So tell me a little bit about your background and how what you think about diversity and inclusion.
Well, I hear a lot of people talk about diversity and inclusion, and that's what they do is they talk about it and they virtue signal. I've actually lived it. I've spent 10 years of my life overseas in a socialist developing nation where I witnessed the Communist Party firsthand and the effects of its lives on its people. So I've lived as a minority. My wife is from a foreign country, an immigrant to America, a legal immigrant to America that filled out all the paperwork and dotted every I. We stood in the rain for 2 hours outside the embassy to get that interview. So there are immigrants that come to this country legally with dreams, and that should be embraced, and I do embrace it because I've lived it. Other people, I don't know if they've even been out of McLean County. They certainly haven't lived in a socialist country for a decade like I have. So I see what it can do and how it can destroy society and kill the dreams of future generations.
Now, what country were you in, and why were you over there? Can you tell me, or no?
Certainly. I was in the Socialist Republic of Vietnam.
Okay.
I had traveled throughout the region. I had previously worked at the state capitol in Little Rock, and my boss lost a runoff election, and I had free time and money, and the president had just opened up Vietnam like they tried to do with Cuba recently. So it was a closed country prior to me going. I was in the very first batch to go back over to Vietnam in 1995. Ended up staying there 10 years. And
so you were over there because, serving?
No. It started off as a vacation, and then one thing led to another, and then there was nothing but opportunities and such. Yep. And I was single and didn't have a job, so why not? I traveled Asia and settled down in Vietnam, did all right. Came back 10 years later with 9 suitcases, a baby, and an immigrant wife, and landed in Bloomington with literally nothing except a family that has been here 4 generations. And it wasn't 2 hours after the plane lands that our good friend Dan Brady's knocking on the door, welcoming us to the neighborhood. And so Bloomington has been a very welcoming and accommodating place. Because I've lived it, and having diversity in my life, and 2 biracial children that have gone to the public school system in Bloomington and have done quite well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do want to talk about that as well, the public education and things like that. I do want to talk about that, but I mean, first I've got to say, wow, your wife, I would love to meet her someday. She sounds incredible, and I'm glad that you've come in and shared your story about your travels and how you lived in Vietnam and came back, and you've witnessed firsthand that socialist country. And I'm glad that your wife got her citizenship. I'm glad that you are here in Bloomington and you've decided to take up residency area. And Dan Brady, which we will get to as well, because I believe that do you work with Dan Brady?
Oh, I'm just a volunteer. Dan doesn't have the benefit of a professional staff like some of his wealthy opponents. But Dan's out there working. I drive for Dan on the weekends. I'll pass out the flyers. I'll drive him and get him where he needs to go. Mm-hmm. And it's really fun to go and watch Dan and how much he's liked throughout the state. He's got friends everywhere. He may not have as much money, but let me tell you, nobody's working harder than Dan Brady for that job, and nobody wants it more than he does, and for the right reasons.
Right, exactly. I've been hard on Dan Brady a couple of times and I wouldn't be doing my job here. And I know that the leftists, they're going to be like, well, you didn't ask about that. You didn't ask about that. So I wanted to ask, you speak highly of Dan Brady, and I think it's important, being that you deal with the taxpayer dollars. Are you going to be like Dan Brady in that you kind of spend taxpayer dollars? He did vote yes for the gas tax, doubling that gas tax, and that's factual. What do you think about that? And I won't have you speak on Dan Brady's behalf. I know that he has, said it a couple of times that, he voted for that gas tax, and, it wasn't, and he's talked with me about it before, and I've asked him that question and kind of talked his way out of it. But I'm curious your position on that and the gas taxes at the state level, and what you think about raising taxes here in McLean County.
Well, if I'm on the county board, I will never vote for a tax increase. You're not going to see me do that unless that tax increase goes directly to support the men and women and our first responders on the county level. Mm-hmm. And if we can't find the money somewhere else to do it, then perhaps we shouldn't be taxing in the first place.
Okay, yes. And your thoughts on Dan Brady?
Dan Brady is open. Dan Brady likes consensus. Dan Brady may have voted some way that some members of our party don't like sometimes. But if you look at his record with the NRA, you look at his life record, you look at everything that he's done over a 20-year career in Springfield, he has been a positive R contribution that stood up for his constituents and makes constituent service the primary reason he's in public service to begin with.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people in this community who really respect Dan, and that's one thing that, you know, I look at the voting record and there's things that I don't like, and I probably would have voted a different way if I was serving in that office, but if I'm not serving in that office, then you don't really know, right? And you do have to kind of give some leniency where leniency is supposed to be, and it's hard to be a state representative, I'd imagine, at that kind of level, because you're literally showing up to you're like a lamb showing up to a pack of wolves, because the majority in Springfield it's the super majority, despite what Governor J.B. Pritzker will say. This is a super majority, and it doesn't even matter if Dan Brady shows up for a vote or not, honestly. And I hate to say that, but it's true. The Republicans in Springfield at this point, they could not show up, and it's still like that. It's the same thing as if they were to show up and vote the way that they wanted to. And a lot of people will press me on, you know, Scott Preston is another one who votes a certain way on the Normal Town Council and has really screwed over a lot of normal residents. Has voted for tax increases before, right? He didn't vote this past couple of years for tax increases, but they do vote that way. But you have to understand that Scott Preston is operating on a Normal Town Council, and these people are legit socialists. So you are kind of, you know, and I'm not all for not bending, but you have to understand when you go into these things, you have to realize what kind of reality you're in. Are you going to vote for a Scott Preston who, you know, might vote a way that you don't like sometimes? Or are you going to vote for a Sharon Chung who literally is in favor of a comrade communist being a manager of her campaign? Like, these people subscribe to an ideology that's dangerous. Would you rather vote for them, or are you going to vote for somebody who is at least sane, right? And if you don't like it, then get out there and run. And that's exactly what Geoff Tompkins is doing. He's running for McLean County Board, District 7. Did want to also talk about this and your positions on public education, because you had brought up you have biracial children. Fantastic. I think that is diversity and inclusion, right? And a lot of the time, these people, they act like they're the virtue signal and that, you know, look at me, look at my race. You lived it. And you've been in a diversity, inclusion, and you've been in a diverse place, and you've come back and you are now serving, and you're going to try to serve this county. Wanted to ask about public education. You said that your kids do well in the Bloomington public schools. What do you think about, and this has come out with the Illinois report card, a lot of the reading comprehensions are down. Specifically, I think, no, I can't remember. I think it's like the third, like we're up there in this Illinois report card when it comes to the reading and comprehension rates, and then also math, but specifically reading. Our kids can't read. And I just run into it on a regular basis. Is, you know, a lot of the Bloomington students, high school students that I talk to, they're not doing so hot. So I don't know about your kids. Maybe they're the normal. But what do you think, and how do you think the BHS or Bloomington Public Schools are doing?
I can't speak for every parent's experience, but I know that since kindergarten through high school, that my kids have gotten a first-rate education and have a first-rate experience throughout. They've had excellent teachers that are both caring and engaged. I don't have any complaints at all. I just wish they didn't grow so fast. You know, they're here today and gone tomorrow.
How old are your children?
I've got an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old.
Wow. Wow. Geoff, you look great. You look great. I wouldn't have expected that you had an 18-year-old. But I know that a lot of parents do reach out to me, and they say that they're concerned about their kids' education. Now, I think that there's a lot of things that come down from the state level, the Illinois State Board of Education, this Comprehensive Sex Act, a lot of things like that. But on the heels of, and there, I'm sure it touches your district, Unit 5. I'm sure there's constituents within your district when it comes to Unit 5. They're trying to put this tax referendum on the ballot. So along with Geoff Tompkins' name, you might see this tax referendum on the ballot. In Unit 5 is asking for this tax increase. So I wanted to ask your opinions on this tax increase, and if you think that it's going to go towards the teachers, and if it's a smart fiscal move for the McLean County Unit 5 to push, and that's what they're doing, is pushing for this tax referendum.
Living in District 87, and my district is wholly contained within the city of Bloomington, I don't really want to prejudge what another community or another school district wants to do. Mm-hmm. But I do know this: if that money gets wasted on administrative salaries and cars and conferences and lobster dinners and doesn't actually filter down to the classroom where the rubber meets the road, then it's money flat wasted, and we shouldn't do it.
Right.
I am not pro and I'm not against. It is not my fight, but if I was in the district, I would probably lean against it until such time that it was proven to me that that money will get to the classroom, that will get to the kids, that won't go to another $120,000 administrative aid 3 position. They have their issues in Unit 5. At one time, the buses didn't even run.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on over there.
And that's the thing that I think is their problem with Unit 5, is that instead of trying to figure out what's going on with their budget issues and why they don't have the money for these things and why their budget is in such a crisis, because it really is, it's in a crisis. Now, if they don't get this money, and I honestly, I'm kind of with you, because I'm kind of scared when you boil down the numbers, and I've looked at the budget, when you boil it down, they might have to close up some districts, because they literally cannot run with the spending that they are planning to continue doing. They cannot run without this tax increase. This is going to balance their budget. They won't have a balanced budget without this tax increase. And if they don't get this tax increase, they're going to have to take a hard look at closing down some districts or some schools, or cutting staff. I think it was, we boiled down the numbers. I think it was like 200, close to 200 teachers they would have to cut.
Don't you find it unusual, Kat, that the first things they always want to cut are the band and the teachers?
Yeah.
They never want to cut out any of the frosting. They never want to scrape any of the gravy off the biscuit. They just want to make a propaganda-like fear that, we won't have band. Really? I can't believe that an educated educational professional would rather cut a band program than get rid of a few people in the office.
Yeah, and this and DEI. There was a DEI administrator. She gets paid very handsomely, and it's just like, why would you not cut that and cut spending where you would need? And it's a hot issue, and we're going to talk about it when we come back, because we have got to cut to break. But when we also come back, I want to talk about some controversial land use questions, eminent domain, the windmills, and if that's something that, and I don't know if and I'd have to pull up the map here, the McLean County District 7, which is where Geoff Tompkins is running. If that in Cat City's 92.9 the news and talk Bloomington Normal, and of course I've got Geoff Tompkins, and we are having a good discussion, and I think I'm being fair. He goes, man, you're asking some questions, and I'm like, yeah, I know. I tend to ask some questions, but I like to be fair. And Geoff Tompkins, and I need to make this very, very clear, Geoff Tompkins is no Benjamin Webb. He's no Val Lehman. And I think that a lot of people get into this, idea of, well, Scott Preston, and, that's exactly the kind of attitude that we don't need going into this election. We need an attitude that says, is Geoff Tompkins about family? Is Geoff Tompkins about our law enforcement? Is Geoff Tompkins about not spending your taxpayer dollars in this county? Because we pay, I think it's like one of the highest property taxes in the nation. I mean, I think we're second in the nation here in McLean County when it comes to property taxes. So these are the issues people care about. And is he a socialist? So those are the questions you need to ask yourself. And if, you're finding yourself voting for a legit socialist, then you've got to reevaluate your priorities and you need to stop voting. I'm just going to say, I think everybody should vote. But if you're voting for socialists, then you need to reevaluate who you are as a person, because socialism is dangerous. And I think you could attest to that better than I could, Geoff, being that you had lived in a socialist country for 10 years.
Absolutely. Socialism works for the top 3%. Absolutely. Their children will go to school at universities overseas. They will have villas by the sea. They will have nice cars and nice homes. And other people get to work in a coal mine or a rice field. And pretty much the way it is. It's not going to happen here. It's not going to happen in my county. It's not going to happen while Geoff Tompkins is on the county board. And I'm going to do everything I can to stop the socialist Democrats in this town. I don't think they represent our values. I don't think they represent their own values. I think in 10 years, some of these people might look back and say, wow, maybe I wasn't right on those issues.
Yeah.
When you actually get a paycheck that you've gone and put 40 hours of sweat and toil in and open it up and see how much is bitten out of it. When you actually have kids that go to school, when you actually go to hot dog day and bite into the worst hot dog you've ever eaten, and you wonder, where's our school budget going? It's certainly not going to the cafeteria.
That was perfect. Just get real close to the mic there, because my levels. I just looked at my levels and I'm like, no, I'm just okay. I'm kidding. But this is Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. That was probably the best way I've ever heard anybody put that. When you go to the school cafeteria and you go in for a hot dog day or whatever, and you bite into the worst hot dog you've ever eaten in your entire life, and you're like, where are our taxpayer dollar going? That's perfect. Because that's real. That's so real, Geoff. And he's running for McLean County Board District 7. And we were talking a lot about his kids. And I do want to get to the fair use land use questions. Because solar farms, wind turbines, things like that, controversial land use and eminent domain, a lot of that. I do want to get into that. But I did want to ask you about Bloomington High School. I know that your kids go there and that they do very, very well. And we were talking about the reading rates of Decatur and Bloomington. Now, the reading rates in Decatur are very, very low. I think it was 6%, and the Wall Street Journal reported that. And then overall in the Chicago public school system, it was 13%. And I don't got Bloomington numbers on me right now, but it's up there. I think we're like third or fourth when it comes to reading comprehension, like worst cities. Also, Peoria voted. We're not doing great here in Central Illinois. Peoria was rated by CBS 15th deadliest city in the nation, which is quite concerning. But Bloomington, your kids do very, very well, and we were kind of talking about how they were in AP classes, and that kind of reminds me of my time. They're in AP classes and things like that. My time in school, I was, in AP classes and stuff like that, and I was kind of removed from a lot of the crazy that was going on in the public school system. So being the BHS is in your district, and being then, you've got Bloomington school districts, is there something that you would push for at the county level to try to improve the safety of students, or to try to improve the reading comprehension? Is there something you could do at the county level? I don't know. Maybe just communicate with the district?
Every teacher in District 87, every administrator in District 7 knows that they can call Geoff Tompkins 24/7. I'll do everything I can to help them, because it's helping our kids. It's helping our future. I don't know if there's any one specific thing that the county board can do for the school to improve reading rates, but anything we can do, I'm behind. And I just think if kids read early and they read often, it's a thing that will stick with them the rest of their life. Mm-hmm.
And guys,
someday if the power goes out and this baby, the phone won't come on, the cell phone's down, if you can read, you can still entertain yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And, it was actually really funny. Where was I? I was in Lincoln, and there was I was at a friend's house, and the power went out, and it was a nice day, and all of a sudden everybody went out onto their porches and started reading. And I was like, you know what? The power out, I got to go out way more. But you never missed a parent-teacher conference. Never missed a parent-teacher conference, and I think that speaks a lot to your character. We talked about that. I know I'm bringing things off-air conversations on air. But you've never missed a parent-teacher conference, and I think that needs to be out there for your constituents. And I know you might not say yes, but I'm saying that Geoff Tompkins has never missed a parent-teacher conference.
Well, shucks. I never designed it that way. I just kept going and never missed one. And all of a sudden, hey, I've been to all of them.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did.
And your kid, and it shows. And I think that's also important. Now, I do want to shift gears here, and I want to talk about the priorities. So, WGLT, they asked Ben Webb, who is also running in County Board District 7, this question. What would be your priorities if asked to consider controversial land use questions such as those surrounding wind turbines or solar farms? So this is what Ben Webb said back in 2020 to GLT. When addressing controversial land use, especially as it relates to renewable energy, it's important to remember the benefits seen to our county as well as our global carbon footprint. I'm proud to live in an area that has confidence in renewable energy and what it brings. Your thoughts about eminent domain. I know there was a lot of massive energy bills passed at the state level. Your thoughts about land use permits and things. I know that wind turbines and solar farms, they've been planning on coming to McLean County. Now, District 7, I don't know if it is a farming district and if it really applies to District 7. What do you think?
Well, District 7 is all urban and it is all Bloomington, so there won't be any places for a wind turbine within District 7. I support clean energy, absolutely, but I support a comprehensive, balanced energy program. Nuclear, solar, wind, fossil. If you are diversified, any one source gets shut off, cut off, price increased beyond ability, you have another avenue to go down. If you are wholly dependent on one source of energy, you're setting yourself up for a very cold winter like is about to occur overseas. I am against eminent domain unless it has a very clear public benefit that you can touch, see, and feel. And when you do use eminent domain, you must use it judiciously and in a minimal fashion to lower the impact on the person that owns the land. I can speak to this personally because my own home, the house that my grandfather built before he left for World War II, we are now raising my children in. And if you look at the pictures, that yard used to go way out to the middle of the street. But over the years, they take a strip here and a strip there and widen the sidewalk here. So your yard's a lot smaller. I'm for the greater good, but you have to preserve the property rights of taxpayers too. You cannot force people to give up their way of life, especially in agriculture in rural parts of the county where farming, some of these farms have been in the family for generations. Some of these people derive their livelihood from it. If they want it on their land, that's their decision, but you shouldn't be able to force it on others.
I love it. And those are some things that I think that the county board is going, those are questions that the county board might be faced with in the coming weeks or in the coming years, given that there is this push for renewable energy, green energy, which I'm all for. I mean, I want my planet to be, I'm all about conserving. So actually, I tell this story a lot of the time is I try to find things that I would normally throw away, like, I don't know, a water bottle, and I try to make it into something like a cute little project or whatever. And I've actually got a little water bottle that I was going to throw away, and I was like, you know what, let's make a little planter out of it. So a lot of the time I, use your little bits and pieces there, and I try to conserve as much as I possibly can. I think that, there is some truth to that. If everybody does their part, then, we're going to save our planet one little tiny step at a time. I think that there is some truth to that. But property rights, I believe, trump Trump, you can't force people to give up their land for a windmill if your goal by 2023 is to not have any kind of, natural gas. I think that's absurd, and you have to realize there's a reality to this situation. You can't have green energy, and you have to have a conversation about what exactly green energy looks like. We do have to cut to break. But when we come back, we're going to talk a lot about the McLean County Jail. I did want to circle back to the McLean County Jail and the McLean County Health Department and their response to the pandemic. Those were two big things that happened in 2020. The last time we saw McLean County board members go up for re-election. And we're talking with Geoff Tompkins. Geoff Tompkins joins me on the other side. Conservative Cat City's 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. And with me in studio, you know him, you love him, it's Geoff Tompkins. And he is running for McLean County Board District 7. We've got a lot of things to tackle here. Before we took the break, we were talking about clean energy and green energy. And you've got some background. You lived over in Vietnam for 10 years of your life. Can you tell me about this whole push for global, and we bring this up because Benjamin Webb brought it up to GLT back in 2020, and I'm looking at these questions that they asked him. They had asked him about this controversial land use, and he said that, as it relates to renewable energy, it's important to remember the benefits seen to our county as well as our global carbon footprint. So I think that's a big thing that Benjamin Webb said, that we have to consider our global carbon footprint. And I'm curious your thoughts about Benjamin Webb and how he had said, hey, we got to be conscientious of our global carbon footprint here in McLean County.
Never met the guy, don't know him.
Okay.
But I do know this, that the earth is a closed ecosystem. If the United States and developed nations continue to do their part in making our environment clean, that's great, but it only takes one or two less than honorable polluters in the world, and a lot of them are located in developing nations that take advantage of lack of government controls or regulations, or maybe it's just cheaper for them to do it, but they pollute on a horrendous rate. So it almost negates everything that we do in the Western world to make the environment better, is countered by pollution and carbon and toxic chemicals from other places in the world. Yeah,
and I think that's you can do as much as you possibly can, and that's what I was talking about, as much as I possibly can to try to conserve, but it's not going to do anything if you don't get your fellow countries to hop on board with you when it comes to this. Why do we always have to be the leader in all of it, and then you guys get to just dump what was it, these big you said the size of this room, pipes that just dump sludge into oceans, and you saw this firsthand?
Oh yeah, I've seen it all over Southeast Asia. There's almost environmental crimes taking place, but I'm not there to judge anybody's culture. I am just there to observe and learn. And I know that in America, if people or companies polluted like that, they'd be shut down in a few hours.
Wow. Wow. It's amazing when you get outside of your bubble here in McLean County. You can preach and preach and preach about me using a plastic straw. But when it boils down to it, things like that happening in other countries, that's what we need to address. And, taking away part of my land for a windmill here in America is going to do nothing in the grand scheme of things. You can't just pop up a windmill wherever you feel like, Jelly Bean. But next, I did want to talk about the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council and how they've addressed jail overcrowding and mental health. So this was a question given to Benjamin Webb back in 2020. GLT did this. For years, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council has addressed jail overcrowding and mental health. What additional issues would you like to see the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council focus on next? Benjamin Webb's answer was, the CJCC will have continuous work to maintain on the topic of mental health. I would like to see the county board be more active and specifically proactive as the council sets its next set of priorities. So, how do you prioritize mental health in the McLean County Jail, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council? How would you address mental health? There's been a lot of resources dedicated to it, but I'm just curious your thoughts on it.
First of all, I think the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council deserves high praise for the work that they have done thus far to take us from where we were to where we are now. There have been great strides made at the county level, both in the jail and in mental health, through the hard work of the people on that committee. I think the future needs to focus on providing juvenile services, especially pre-intake. If we could catch people that are experiencing mental health difficulties are juveniles before they become part of the system. It will relieve the burden all the way through the system, all the way to the end. I think if we intervene early, I think if we have a way to reach the young people and meet their needs, that's the way of the future, and that's the direction we should go. Currently, I was speaking with Miss Judy Buchanan the other day. I was very good friends with the late Rich Buchanan. I served on Liquor Commission with him, and I always turn to Judy when I have questions on this. She served on these committees for many years, and she said the same thing. It's the juvenile. We need to focus on taking care of juveniles. That's got to be the priority. They've come a long way, but I think if there is a gap, it's pre-intake and it's juveniles, and we've got to find a way to address that.
Yeah, the juveniles, and I think more and more you're starting to see a lot of our youth, and I hate to say it, our black community here. I don't know what's going on with these kids, but something is happening where they are struggling in school. They are missing school, truancy, and a lot of things that, it all starts with education before, they get out there and start to, commit crimes. And it's not just black students. I'm not just saying it's black students, but there is a problem in the black community where they're committing crimes. And I think that it starts at the public education level. Me personally, this is where I think it starts, the public education level, but these mental health programs as well. Now, what's a big problem that has happened this year, and I'm curious what you would say to a Sharon Chung, if elected to your county board position as a McLean County board member for District 7, what would you say to a Sharon Chung who is communicating with inmates families? Let me preface that. So there was email correspondence between her and John Sandage, and at a county board meeting, John Sandage actually took some time out and addressed Sharon Chung with this and had said, why are you contacting the families of inmates and trying to tell them that they are in a not so safe area, or the McLean County Jail is being run poorly? That was basically her correspondence. I don't know if you know the story at all, but I'm doing a poor job of explaining it, but she would get out there, and I've got the emails. She did contact inmates' families and said, hey, you need social justice, equity, and stuff like that. And she said that the McLean County Jail is being run poorly. And then at the same time, you've got something where the state is not shipping out the mentally ill, insane, guilty by reason of insanity inmates in the McLean County Jail, where they're supposed to be going to state-run facilities. Governor J.B. Pritzker is not holding up his end of the law. It's actually a state law that he violated. So how do you work with members like Sharon Chung, with the jail, with mental health, the insanity inmates, the guilty by reason of insanity? Is there a way that you can satisfy Sharon Chung, but also help out Sheriff John Sandage? Is there some way, sort of way you can kind of bridge the gap here?
Well, first of all, I'm not in this race to help Sharon Chung with anything. And if I'm going to help anybody, it's going to be Sheriff John Sandage. And I can tell you this, as a county board member, I will not interfere with the operation of the jail. I will not cause disunity among prisoners and others that are currently in the jail. I will not take social justice activism into our correctional facility. I think that what we're witnessing with those actions are simple Saul Alinsky socialist tactics to cause disunity and distrust between government and the families of people that are incarcerated in the jail. I don't think it's right. I think it serves no other purpose than political. I think when people go into the jail to do something like that, they're not going in there for the prisoners. They're going in there for their own social agenda and their own ego.
I love it. We're talking with Geoff Tompkins, and I think the same. I was really, and that's something that has really peeved me off this year, and I was just so shocked that you would have somebody, and I didn't think she would stoop that low. Is to undermine. That's what it was, undermining Sheriff John Sandage. John Sandage, really nice sheriff and good guy. Very, actually, and a lot of people probably would disagree with me on it. I think that he's a quiet guy. I think that he's very quiet and calm and very, very peaceful. Like whenever he walks into a room, all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, I'm okay.
Well, I'm proud to have his endorsement in this race.
Yeah. John Sandage endorsing Geoff Tompkins. Also wanted to talk a lot about the health department. So the health department and I don't really see eye to eye on a whole lot. I was kind of shocked at their, and this is something that I don't think a lot of people talked about when the McLean County Health Department did this. It was back in, I think it was the June 2021 floods that happened in Bloomington, where people's sewer was in their homes, and they were kind of slow to the response. I remember reaching out to the McLean County Health Department, asking them, what's the protocol here when you have sewage in your home? And they said, we'll get back to you with a press release. And it was like a couple of days, I think. I'd have to go back into my email, but I don't know if they would have come out with a press release if I hadn't have asked that question. And I, kind of not take pride in it, but I was like, well, this is good that we've got some sort of media willing to push against the McLean County Health Department and asking the question, hey, what do we do about the sewage in the homes? What's the response to this thing? It's clearly not. And I had asked the question because I had somebody come in to talk about the sewage in their home, and they were displaced. Actually, a lawyer who had tried to go up against the city of Bloomington and has left the city of Bloomington. Actually, I can't speculate on to why he left, but I think that he was tired of infrastructure. I think that he was tired of Illinois, quite frankly, in the city of Bloomington, and their response to the whole sewage thing. But what do you think about the McLean County Health Department and what they did, not only in that situation with, they did eventually come out, and I want to be very clear, with guidance, but it was kind of slow. I would say a few days, 4 days, something like that after all of this happened. I feel like there should have been a better response. And also their response to COVID-19, the pandemic, obviously. What would you do as a county board member to try to help the department meet the county's constituents' expectations? Is there something that you could do?
Yes. I think the health department could have been a little more proactive in mitigation efforts after the fact. Perhaps it wasn't McLean County that kicked the can down the road on repairing the sewers, but nonetheless, the result was flooded basements and disaffected homeowners. Perhaps one thing the county health department could have done was to get some people out there to assess the personal health risks of having that kind of flood in your basement. I don't think everybody could just run off to Florida or their second apartment and to wait for that to get fixed. I think the county could have been a little more involved in helping identify potential hazards or mitigation after the fact. Mm-hmm.
I did want to read Benjamin Webb's response to this question that GLT had asked him back in 2020. What are the expectations for the McLean County Health Department in 2021 as they relate to the pandemic? What would you do as a county board member to help meet those expectations? And this is very specific to the pandemic. I had asked you about the sewers because I was more concerned about that. The county health department and their response to COVID, very much overstepping their boundaries, in my opinion. But this is Ben Webb's response. The county health department is a lifeline in our community. I feel that experts must drive the decision making in order for us to work out from under this pandemic and to keep ourselves and our neighbors safe. The county staff should be given the floor and the latitude to make requests necessary for our community's safety. I will advocate for the science, to speak the truth, and to not allow any political figureheads' opinions to undercut the severity of the virus. So your thoughts on Benjamin Webb's response?
Well, that comment certainly didn't age well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, we want the experts to weigh in and step forward and make requests. But leaders have got to lead. Someone's got to make a decision on what to do and when to do it. And they need to take all the facts into consideration when they do that. And there's 20 people that have been chosen by the public to do it. And to try to shove it off on staff only, I think, doesn't serve any of us well.
We have got to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to be talking with Geoff Tompkins. He's running for McLean County District 7. 10 minutes, it'll be fine. Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Now, I have got, and he is just amazing. I mean, this is a really cool thing to have Geoff Tompkins in studio with me and get to know him, get to know about his family, get to know about his background. And we were talking about isolating people. And I think that there are a lot of people in not only the town of Normal, but in McLean County. And there's these punching bags that people grab onto, and all of a sudden they're isolated. So one of the people I think is John Sandage. He's one of those people who they've isolated and made into a punching bag. He doesn't take it. He doesn't take it at all. He's really stands his ground. Although he's a quiet, very respectful guy, in my opinion, I think that he's very quiet and very peaceful. As soon as he walks into a room, I feel safe. And that's one thing you want from your sheriff. And it's been John Sandage with McLean County at the McLean County level. And I think that they tried to do it to Nick Becker at the Bloomington City Council level, and they weren't too successful with that. And I think that a lot of that comes from Mboka Mwambwe. I think that leadership and that, hey, we're not going to do this kind of thing. Although I do push against Mboka Mwambwe getting out there and virtue signaling with the, gay pride parade stuff. It just kind of bothers me, but it is what it is. I like Mboka, and I think that he's a good man. And I think that he has got a solid background where he understands the dangers of socialism. He understands the dangers of government being too involved in your life. And Mboka, a good guy. But I think that he has kind of stopped the buck with that, the whole Bloomington City Council. He's like, no, you're not going to treat the Bloomington City Council members this way. And there is this isolation at the Normal Town Council level. They've isolated Stan Nord. And they've isolated Chuck Erickson a lot of the time at the McLean County Board level, I think. Because he speaks out for the the Law and Justice Center, John Sandage. I did want to talk about McLean County District 5. I know that you're running in District 7, but I wanted to talk about District 5. It's my district, that's why. And I'm kind of curious about the Normal, and it's in the Normal city limits. Airport Road on East College Avenue and South Beach Street on West, and all of these seats. So there's 2 seats on the board. So somebody has to be elected with Geoff Tompkins. And you're the only Republican that's running, correct, in that McLean County District 7, correct?
No, Don Kropp's running as a Republican in the district as well.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. So you could elect 2 Republicans because you have to elect 2 within that district. So that's District 7. And I wanted to talk about District 5 and Elizabeth Johnston and the current and John McIntyre. So your thoughts on John McIntyre, and also running in that district is Hannah Blumenshine. This is a very pivotal one because John McIntyre is the chair, and he's been there for quite some time. Do you think that, you'll see 2 Republicans in this district? What do you think, knowing the political landscape better than I, for sure, because you've been around the political landscape here? Do you think that there will be 2 Republicans elected to McLean County District 5 or no?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Why do you say yes?
One, John McIntyre has a good track record of being on the county board and serving as its chairman. He's been a moderating voice. Sometimes when things get a little heated, John can be very moderate in his response and tempered and measured in his policies. I don't know if he's going to seek re-election as board chairman, but I do know he's seeking re-election to the county board, and I'm confident that he will win. And as for Miss Blumenshine, I know her godmother socially in town, and I've heard nothing. I've only met her a few times, but I've heard great things about her for years. I know her dad. Mm-hmm. I think she'll be a fine representative for the district. I don't know who their opponents are.
Elizabeth Johnston.
Okay. I think that they'll prevail. I do.
Okay. All right. Now I'm curious. District 7, the district you're running in. Will there be 2 Republicans? Will Don Kropp?
Don Kropp and I, yes, I foresee that we'll make it.
Okay. All righty. Well, and I also did want to chat a little bit about this one question I had. What was it? Just overall, who you are as a person, your background. your job currently, what you do on a regular basis, and who you are in this community, and just a little bit about you. I think that that's important.
I'm just a regular guy that goes to work every day. I'm just a guy that tried to raise his kids the best he could in a town. I do everything I'm trying to do. I've served on the Liquor Commission. I've been 2 terms precinct committeeman in Bloomington 25, which is by Old Farm Lakes. I've been 2-term precinct committeeman in Bloomington District 8, which is around Washington School area. My family's been here 4 generations. I just really believe that this community is a solid bedrock of values and optimism and inclusiveness and quality of life. And when I run for the county board, I just want to help keep it that way and not let it go down the socialist rabbit hole. Let it go down the defund the police rabbit hole. Let it go down any of these lanes that a narrow election, the county board is almost evenly split, 9-9, Democrat and Republican. If it splits left, you will face an irreversible downflow, and pretty soon we'll wake up and this will not be the community that it is today.
Yeah. I think that McLean County is a bit of an exception when it comes to a lot of Illinois counties. Will County, Lake County, Cook County, a lot of things in those counties don't fare as well. I will say that I think we've got a booming economy for what it is, right? We pay pretty high property taxes. And I think that if you talk to John Armstrong, who you probably heard early this morning, he has on the house, John Armstrong, Cities 92.9. He'll tell you about the housing market. He'll tell you that it's booming, and it is. I mean, I wish that I could just say, oh, it's just a realtor trying to sell houses. It's really not. He's like straight up. The housing market is very, very different here in McLean County than it is even at a national level. Like everywhere nationally, you're seeing the housing market start to fall.
If I could, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you touched on something that just really makes me passionate sometimes, and that's affordable housing. I almost feel that an entire generation of Americans, perhaps your generation, Kat, is being cheated out of the American dream. Housing prices are unaffordable.
Yeah, I will not be buying a house
2 generations
for years.
of renters. You know, when you're renting, you're paying your landlord's mortgage, and I understand that certain situations and certain times in your life phase that renting is the best move to make. But long term, if you're going to raise a family and everything, you want to be a homeowner. That is a fundamental ticket to the proverbial American dream. And I think we're cheating an entire generation out of that experience. And
to have babies. And we're all about family. We're all about having those values that you were talking about in the city. And when I see people out in Bloomington Normal and McLean County walking their dogs with their babies on their hips or in the stroller, and that's when I'm like, yes, this is what America is about. It's about having a family and getting that ownership and having that property and having a say in what you do with that property. That's all about that. That's what America is all about. And I truly do believe that's what Bloomington Normal is all about. But you bring up, there's no way that I could ever buy a house. I'll be straight. There's no way.
Back in the old days, they said what this country really needs is a good 5-cent cigar. But in 2022, what America really needs is a decent 3-bedroom house for $150,000.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, exactly. I know. And it's just it's scary to think that I will never be able to buy. I honestly,
never,
the way I'll never be able to buy a house on my own.
Don't say
There's
that.
no way. But it's just
and property taxes too. Once you buy the house, you know,
and nobody tells you about how high those
is quite
are.
heavy here in Bloomington.
Oh, yes, very, very, very. And I'd love to see those rolled back. We are pressing up against time. So I did want to say, hey, Geoff Tompkins, anything else for the good of the order? Anything else you would like to add?
Yes, I'd just like to encourage everybody to exercise their constitutional right to go vote. We're a prosperous and educated community, and it is simply not acceptable that 20% turnout is unacceptable for a community of this quality. Go vote, whether it's for me or for anybody, but go vote, go exercise your right to vote. And if you want to vote intelligently, vote straight ticket Republican on November 8th.
There you go. All right, folks, this is Conservative Cat. Come back after the break.